Hello, everyone. Welcome again to our first collaborative and online event, Love for Immigrants Virtual Art Healing Speaker Series and Exhibit. So my name is Maribel Rodriguez. I'm the founder of Love for Immigrants. And as you've been hearing in the videos, Love for Immigrants is a social space for immigrant support. It aims to connect immigrants to their communities as respected, loved, and heard individuals by sharing their narrative through art and storytelling. And today we have the pleasure of having Josemarie here with us, a photographer as well as visual artist in many other mediums. And we're so grateful to have her. Thank you so much.
Hi everyone, my name is Josemarie Nyagah. I'm from Kenya. I'm a visual artist. I'm a curious creative who's really inspired by different narratives, and I find new meaning each time I go to a different place or explore different places, and that really shifts the way I think or do things or see the world.
Wonderful. And you're our first and only global artist. So for some of our US based citizens, or not citizens, but immigrants who have heritage in Kenya or who have roots in Kenya, so this is a great way to reconnect. And for people who want to learn more about art in Kenya or learn more about Josemarie's journey there, this is also a great way to offer a global perspective. So going to our first question is, you mentioned the theme of nature in your work. Can you discuss a little bit about that theme?
I think that when I look at art, and I think this is from a very young age, I've always been inspired by how much greater the world is than we are as human beings, and I think that has made a conclusion in my head that we cannot be without nature, and that is sort of like my reference point for everything that we do. And we see it in how we treat nature. If we do something wrong, nature turns against us, and we're having things like global warming or climate change. So I really think that at the center of everything that I do, I always go back into the idea that nature is such a vast and colossal part of who we are, and I like to use that as a reminder anytime I create something.
Wonderful. What a beautiful reminder during these times of climate change and where many people are awakening to their role in helping nature help us. So let's turn a little bit into the side of emotion. So how are your emotions playing a role in your creations, in your photography, and even beyond photography?
Creations for me are like the basis of what I create. Anything that evokes me to create something is coming from an emotion, whether it's a very deep emotion or something that I've experienced as I create. So it's kind of the root ingredient for everything that I make. And I think it's the one thing that gives my creation a deeper sense of meaning, so that anyone who looks at it can relate differently, because the emotion that it's displayed in the image or the piece of work is inspiring them in a different way.
Thank you for that. It's a great reminder, I think, for our audience to think of ways to process their emotions and just get it out through a creation, through photography, and through different kinds of mediums. Uh, this is a little bit more about your work, your self-portraits. You use this abstraction in your self-portraits. And what does this mean to you? And also, what inspired you to create these abstract self-portraits?
With abstract, I remember even in high school when I did a bit of art, I was really intrigued by how you could, instead of just making something and it's very obvious that that is a tree or that is a house or it's a person, the different elements that are included in abstract art create a different or a deeper sense of thought-provoking process when you're looking at a piece of painting or sculpture or even my self-portrait. So for me, I like to include it because it now allows me to sort of explore the different themes that I want to be seen in my self-portraiture, so that it's not very obvious. Yeah, so I think it's just kind of always interesting for me to play around with the different things that I find connect my self-portraiture to a sense of an idea.
Wonderful. And a piggyback question to that is, um, do the self, what message do you try to bring out with those self-portraits?
I think introspection, sort of everything that's going on in my head at the time that I'm creating it, or had gone on in my head beforehand. So I think that's kind of, aside from just, showing my face or movement or the place that I'm in, it's mostly just kind of like a way for somebody to read my thoughts, even if they're not very clear.
Yeah, I definitely see that with one of them where you have paint on your face and then you move your head, and so it creates this kind of shaken look. Uh, it almost, for me, what I get from it is this feeling of overwhelm or this feeling of lots of thoughts going on. And so I can see how different people can interpret it differently, but that does get across that there's some thought there.
Exactly.
So, which song is your favorite song and why? As well as which one of your art pieces give you a similar experience or feeling?
So the song "Looking Too Closely" is very interesting because it makes me particularly think about how we introspect and how we think about ourselves. And oftentimes, you don't want to look at yourself in the mirror because maybe you don't like this angle or that angle. And that's kind of the thing that is portrayed in the song, because the artist sounds like he's talking a lot about his depression and how he copes with his depression. In the lyrics, you hear him say, "You don't want to hurt yourself by looking too closely." But what I also take from the song in different situations is that we don't always have to look at ourselves and think, "Oh, I don't like this about myself." It's to take that thing as well and try to make better out of it, or to try and understand it better. So the things about ourselves that we don't like or we feel are too difficult to explore, especially traumas, or just kind of the things that take us to that dark place in our lives. I think that song for me is like a little reminder, or I'd say like, I don't know, a painkiller, because it makes you understand and accept that there are parts of yourself that you don't like, you don't appreciate, but it also reminds you that that's kind of part of, your whole story. And looking too closely, those particular words are just very strong in the sense that they make us know that whenever we look at ourselves, we shouldn't look at ourselves as subjects. We should be able to understand ourselves as the whole spectrum. So it's not just how other people know you or how you want other people to perceive you, but really understanding, where you've come from and where you're going, and how that whole journey is embedded in all your experiences. And that song, kind of the art piece that it connects to with the ones I've created is the root of growth. So the one that has the two sides. So I'm still in one side of the picture, and on the other side of the picture I'm moving around. And those are kind of like thoughts. And there's so many different thoughts that we have, all the time. So when you're thinking about this thoughts, or when the thoughts are kind of moving in your head, it becomes a lot. So it's important to kind of take a pause and be still and understand that you have all these different things going on. Yeah, so that you kind of have like a better understanding of who you are. Yeah.
Thank you for that. And what Josemarie is saying seems simple, but it actually takes a lot of growth to get to the point of even admitting what parts of ourselves we're not wanting to look at, to admit that we have dark sides like all human beings that we need to explore and understand why, and look at our past and look at our present and see where we want to go in the future. And it takes a lot of courage to be here today and express that. And so that's what it's about. And particularly with art healing is remembering that not all healing is going to be beautiful, even though at the end you probably find something beautiful. The journey there sometimes is ugly, sometimes it is difficult to even listen to our own thoughts. And so some of these artful ways of expressing, of processing, will make the journey much more enjoyable. And at the same time, you come up doing some fun things. So this is one of my favorite questions, and I think we'll end it there unless you have other questions after this, is what is your earliest memory of art in your home country? And what is the art scene like there?
My earliest memory of art in my home country was when we took a school trip to Nairobi. I was pretty young. I think I was in lower primary. Can't remember the age that I was. And it wasn't particularly like paintings, but exploring like the culture scene of our country. So we went to the museum, we went to like the national park, and that was the first time I was like, oh wow, there's so much, that happens here, that or happened, in our country. And just for me being able to understand what culture meant, I think that was my first introduction to culture, because at the museums, you see the different tribes that there are and the different traditions that they carry. So that was my earliest introduction to art, and I grew more curious about it because different tribes had different ways of expressing themselves, and that's what made them unique. Um, what I would say about the art scene, I'd say it's slowly growing. It hasn't always been appreciated. People haven't particularly understood why art is important, or that, art is something that somebody can use to, understand themselves, or even know where they're coming from, or even just appreciate who they are. So it's growing. There's lots of exhibitions, there's galleries coming up, and people are more and more appreciating art. So I'd say it's still in the growing stage, still pretty early, but coming up slowly, yeah.
Wonderful. It's really exciting to hear your journey in the past, looking at the different cultural expressions through arts, and your perspective on learning all these new things when you were younger. Is there a final thought you would like to leave our audience with?
Something that I'm still trying to understand or integrate in my daily life, or even in my art, is appreciating the process and acknowledging the process, whether it's the process of creating art, of our daily lives, of our work, of our families. We should always remember that before we get to the end goal or the end result, the process is what makes that. So just really being in that moment and appreciating it, and sort of like, swimming inside of it, and really just taking the time to appreciate it, is something that's really important in the whole human experience.
Thank you for that beautiful reminder. Many of us, we might forget when we're trying to achieve our goals, or we're trying to create, this beautiful end result, that it's all about the process, especially with healing, especially with our own lives. I mean, I love that comparison between the process of art and the process of our lives. And it's also important that it's a journey. And Josemarie, it's been a pleasure to have you share your story in your journey. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
And to all our listeners, have a beautiful healing journey.